There are 6 legal bases under the GDPR under which you can process personal data, and none of them are particularly better than the other. So a business really needs to look at the personal data they're collecting and they're processing, look at the relationship they have with that particular person, and then determine the appropriate basis under which they process. So if you're a business processing personal data, one of the key elements of the legal basis is that the processing is necessary, at least for the majority of them. So if you're processing personal data and it's not necessary to do that in order to achieve the purpose of the business, then it may well be that you shouldn't be processing, you shouldn't be operating under the GDPR. So the first legal basis to look at is consent, and that's the one that's historically been most used by businesses, whether they're dealing with customers or clients. Under the GDPR, this is enhanced in that you need to get clear affirmative consent from someone if you're going to use consent as the basis for processing. In addition to that, if you use consent, then the data subject, the individual who's giving you consent, has enhanced rights under the Act. So essentially, our advice would probably be, look at what other legal bases are available and consider whether they would be more appropriate. Aside from consent, there are other legal bases. These could include for the purpose of completing a contract with the individual concerned, or it could be to protect the vital interests of the person concerned, or it could be to fulfil a legal obligation that you as a business have to another organisation or under various legislation. A new legal basis is that relating to public tasks, and that relates more to public authorities or to businesses who are carrying out services on behalf of public authorities. For public authorities, they need to use the public task basis when they're performing their everyday duties. They can only use a legitimate interest basis when they're performing any commercial tasks outside of their regular remit. The final legal basis for processing would be under a legitimate interest of the company. It's a 3-stage test that you would need to go through, and that would be to look at the purpose of the processing to make sure it is for a legitimate purpose for the business. You would need to balance that processing against the rights and freedoms of the individual, and then you would need to make sure that any processing is compliant with the principles of the GDPR. And if you can tick all those 3 boxes, then you're likely to be able to comply and to be able to use that legitimate interest provision under the GDPR. In terms of what businesses should be doing at the moment in order to prepare for the GDPR, so far as these legal bases are concerned, they should review what processing activity they're carrying out at the moment and the purposes for which they're doing this, and look at the legal basis they currently use compared to the ones coming up under the GDPR, and try and choose the most appropriate one to use.